Are you in any sense surprised that oil has not reacted more dramatically today than it has?
Happy New Year, Tyler. No, not really that surprised. The market has gotten pretty complacent. After all, we had the biggest spike after the biggest attack on an oil facility ever in mid-September, and that quickly unwound as the damage was seen to be light and reversible. And while we have to wait to see after Iran completes the mourning period and calibrates and conducts its retaliation, I think the market's taken the view that Iran is sane enough not to uncork a Gulf war by retaliating directly against U.S. soldiers, bases, and vessels, which now President Trump has shown for that he will impose a high cost. So I think the market is sort of taking it in stride pretty well so far.
Kevin, same question to you. Are you surprised that oil has not reacted more dramatically than it did? And to follow on what Bob just said, what kind of Iranian retaliation would cause oil to react very dramatically?
Tyler, hi, and Happy New Year to you. I think, first of all, the market is probably not pricing in the realities of what could go wrong adequately, and the reasons for that are fundamental in nature. There's about 2.9 billion barrels in OECD inventories, about where it was last November, the November before. You've got 1.1 million barrels per day of supply ahead of demand in the first half of the year by our projection, and that might even be conservative. And you've got 3.1 million barrels per day of spare capacity, at least notionally, two-thirds of which is in Saudi, so maybe not so spare. But when you think about what we're really talking about here, the kinds of escalations that fall outside of betting on Iranian restraint and U.S. rationality, those kinds of escalations get into targets that could be producing targets in the region. Targets like the Strait of Hormuz, oil transit routes. It doesn't look like Iran's ready yet to target U.S. troops, as Bob said, but cyber attacks can be incredibly disabling and also disabling to the operations and business systems of producers. All those things can move barrels off the market.
Bob, we were discussing a bit in our last several segments, of course, about the ripple effects of all of this. What does this move potentially signal to some of our adversaries? We talked about Russia a bit, but what about North Korea?
Well, I think North Korea and Moscow and even China are dialing down a little bit their willingness to take on Donald Trump. Again, I think everybody was surprised that Donald Trump personally authorized the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Until then, Donald Trump has been showing a marked unwillingness to use military force and to confront Iran and so forth. I think China is sitting back and loving it. They love the idea of the United States getting enmeshed in a quagmire. I think Russia, same thing. I think Kim Jong-un may have some second thoughts about provoking Donald Trump again, though. Again, Donald Trump acted a little bit out of character here last night, and I think everyone's taking that into account.
Because he has certainly staked his part of his political appeal on the idea that he was going to go for peace and prosperity and reduce foreign interventions. Kevin, let's talk about what this could mean in terms of our allies, whether it's Great Britain or Berlin or Paris or Brussels, and the possible impact that these actions could have on Iran pulling further away from the nuclear agreement and reinvigorating its nuclear program.
Well, Iran had threatened in November that it would take yet another step back from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, that 2015 nuclear deal that the U.S. withdrew from in 2018. And that's due to happen, based on their calendar, tomorrow. Maybe it won't be tomorrow, but maybe it'll be soon. And it'll test the Europeans, who have really said, well, we don't want you to do bad things, but please don't give up the deal. It's been a stance that reflects really the vulnerabilities they have, not just to missiles. They're within Iran's missile range for conventional warheads, but also migrants. Another war in the Middle East puts a big stress on the fabric of the European institutions that have trouble in absorbing migrants in the past. So when you think about their reticence, there's a real test coming up. And if Iran decides to move on two fronts, retaliation against assets in the region and also potentially on the nuclear front, does it push Europe closer to the U.S. position? That's a calculation they'll have to be making when they contemplate what to do next.
In other words, the Europeans might pull out of the JCPOA or whatever its acronym is.
They've threatened to do so. Now, it's a long, slow walk for them. It could be as little as 15 or 30 days, according to the UN Resolution 2231. But in practice, they're likely to slow walk it because they're not in a rush to leave.